Okay, we're going into part two on looking into the Etruscans. Mainly, we've been doing a lot of architecture, and we're going to start going back and forth with architecture and then art and crafts and things. And we were just talking about this area here and its corbelledness in part one. If you haven't seen it, at the very end of this, you can go up here in the top right hand corner and it'll go back to part one. Looks like this is going to be a three-parter. It may go longer depending on how long-winded I go. But, uh, and going on to the next part, from one, from two, from three to the next, two to three, and so on, is going to be up here in your left-hand corner. And so it looks neat corbelled outside, but interior to this, it's all been hewn out so it looks very much like a pillared hall and a normal house. And so it doesn't really look like a cave, but it has been given extreme adaptation to try to look very homishness looking, And these people before this time were building with a lot of wood, and that's the reason we don't find any of their houses and stuff. But strange that there is a time way back when of cave dwelling and things, and then later making this. Doesn't appear that it was started out as a smaller cave and they built it up or anything. It went straight through into the granite, and you can see the giant slabs that they've put in here. Many people don't realize that this is made out of giant slabs in the first place. Here's the little cut between it. See if I can. Oh, that's so bright too. See that slab line? It's over here at the edge. It cuts through. That's a conduit that they've put in there now for a light that's in each one of them, so you can see them at night. And it's neat to look at this area at night if they do have it lit up, because each one's got a little lit up part, and it kind of reminds you of something like, Lord of the Rings, in the Shire or something. It has this definite look to it. It's real cool. But so the thunderstorm's gone now, definitely, and in fact I've waited a while to do the next part of this. But you can go to a lot of these rooms, and some of them have little bike tricks lead up to them. But you can see the edging here that they've put, and they have an extra mantle over each one, and it slightly overhangs, keeping the water that would run off from running on to the edges. And it's a different type of architecture. They have a few things about their architecture that's quite radically different than other people. This was a lead-in where apparently all the stones came from a long time ago, and it leads down and farther in a pitch, and it looks like they have dug through this earth at this angle so that they could bring these things up and stuff. And it also doesn't appear to be cart rutted, that at the time that they did this, that they may have actually been pulling flat sleds, and there may have been a rolling type of thing, because below a portion of this there is bedrock, and it really doesn't show that grooving that we really see in a lot of places, and around Etrusca too, in that area. And quite a few of the pictures I showed come from that area, but this was not. And it leads down to a river, and they would have brought them into there. Now, a strange look at here. Man, I wish I could get these cropped pictures are just so weird. Let's see if we can do that. So you can see their look, and they look very Trojan-ish if you want to go with that helmet, or Roman, proto-Roman, and things, and the designs that are on their shields. And then you see a man that looks very pointy-hatted, and you would think of that as being something very much more Middle Eastern, very much more Turkish or something like that. And in reality and assessment, these people had a lot of that going on at the time, and it's not necessarily where you think of in that whole style and effect that's there. But it's also not the norm, and so you can see that kind of easy. A lot of these out of Bronze Age, Copper Age into Bronze Age, show these ceremonial looking spears that look like they've gone a little far with its build and did not have to. I don't know if it shows up in here, but you can see a raised ridge in the middle that is extremely indicative of swords and things, right? And it's got an extra edging around it and can be repeatedly sharpened, but it didn't look like this was pulled to a complete sharpness, almost ceremonial and being buried with people. Extra hilting around here, and then what looks like rivets built into them. You can see it over here real distinctly. Rivets built through it, but it's not rivets, it's casting. And you think of something like that going today, because now we rivet things, and so we would, if we made a fake kids thing or something, or a replica, we would maybe not even really use rivets and use two separate pieces of metal in the whole 9 yards and rivet this onto the handle hilt and all of that. And it looks like they poured it to look like that, but it's one. So this shows you an extra bit, but also, can you see the cross-hatching and designs? The squares and the scribbles and the lines that are all drawn and etched onto this thing too. So this appears to be fancy and not just your normal, gonna go poke somebody spear. But it also shows a difference in giant spears. Giant spears we haven't seen since the time of the Solutreans and so on. But occasionally you'll see statues like this, and you can see where he used to hold a spear in that hand there. And a lot of those will have a jagged appearance to it, and this is a ball type of depiction. Notice he has a pointy hat, but also it may appear to be two feathers, and this is found up in Etrusca. Its symbolism is just little circles that they have all around on it, again, which looks like studs or rivets, and extra studs or rivets, a belt and buckle and everything going on, but also it seems to be armored around the legs. So this is trying to be a depiction of their armor on a body, and it doesn't look so bulky like some kind of armor type thing, and a helmet, but quite often that spear. And of course, if we're talking about ball, this is meant to be a lightning bolt. And this is a way over in Etrusca. So people don't think this ball worship and things goes back in ancient times, but you can see the same depiction, and then warriors giving the same depiction, pulling off the same idea. I don't know if you can see it real well in the shot, and let me see if I can go in here more. And this guy's got kind of, elf ears, and this looks very elvish, but then he has a huge crest on him that looks like some kind of horse crest, if you could get their hair to stand up if you cut it just right. And again, in my old one about horses, I show how the old horse had this cropped up mane, that the long-haired maned horse looks like that was bred into it somewhat and then enhanced in quite a way. And they summarize this by looking at all the old cave art and what the original horse would have looked like, and then these people that had actually gotten into domesticating the horses themselves. So it all seemed to happen up in the northern area. You see the giant spearhead on that, not just a normal spearhead, by the way. Here another depiction, a little warped in shape type thing, and it shows you that early and Ubaid type appearance thing, but then there's that same cock rooster crest headdress that's shown on here. You see it in Egyptian art too, where quite often they'll have a headdress with a plumage like this or something. In her hand appears to be a little angel or cherubim type of thing, and this well predates Christianity and actually the writing that we attribute to the Old Testament. And that symbology is here, as I've shown you in a lot of Sumerian art and things that show you the same thing. Here's what looks like a jed pillar type thing that's on here. Now, here's a odd depiction, and one of the special ones I wanted to show you out of this whole series, because people don't make any connections to Sumerians or things, and somehow mentally we've got everybody compartmentalized and think that there's no trade, and I've showed how there's an ancient Silk Road going on before the Silk Road, and apparently it was going on before they knew about silk, and it had a lot to do with hemp and other things that they made into fabrics, ropes, and all kinds of extravagant things. But it wasn't a perpetual Silk Road, which what we draw and came into, instead of being able to go all the way from Rome to there, that people were going partial way, and those people would have things because they went the rest of the way. So they had middlemen and all kinds of things going on. In fact, that's one thing that was accomplished out of the Alexander the Great and so on. But if we look at this is an ancient story, and we've been looking at a lot of mythological stories and how they connect, and look at my storm god thing and everything too. But also some of my ancient Sumerian stories tell this same situation. This is the tale of Humbaba, and this is the idea that there is Gilgamesh and Enkidu, and Gilgamesh and Enkidu killed Humbaba and got a hold of the sacred forest that's there, right? Now, and you can see its ugly face that they give it, and it's very Medusa-ish too. And what's strange is you can see where somebody could come up with a different ideal and a different story out of the same symbology of cutting off the head of Medusa but not looking at her, and making up the concept of the Gorgon ideal, who she was supposed to have been so beautiful, but then the gods turned her to be so ugly. In fact, so ugly that if you looked upon her, you would turn to stone. And that's a weird telling, because it really actually looks like, you know, that Greek statuary that looks real, like somebody's been turned to stone? That these people are partially accredited with that. And that it really didn't have anything to do with it. And why are you turning that lady ugly? Because she was said to have been extremely gorgeous. Well, bad things happened. She did ugly things. She was behind ugly things having happened. Oh, and so you smear her later. That works more. Here's something extremely interesting. You see this niching. It looks like Sumerian niching and things and stuff that you see in a lot of ceremonial areas. But it's purposely made out of different geometric shaped stones that have no commonality to them whatsoever, except for the top piece is spanning over. In fact, even sitting on here, it sits in a set-in piece. It almost makes no sense, but yet when you look at it, if you were to plaster it over this and stuff, it wouldn't matter what it looked like. That it would still be solid, that it was still, and it's still solid there. And the reason it's still standing today is because all of these are solid cuts, and even ones that look like they lean down in most cases have a hold on things and a grip. And it's weird that they have an idea. You know, if you take and shatter a piece of glass and then scoot it all back together, we can see it's shattered. That's the appearance this looks like. People have made up silly shit like, well, they took a laser and go, and then the rocks were already cut and they didn't do anything. They just, you know, that's why they move the rocks? They didn't have to. I remember being a kid and thinking the idea that they could have laser cut the whole thing up. The problem is that all the lines all the way through the whole thing would of course have to line up, and that doesn't work that way, and it isn't that way. It's offset like bricks and all kinds of things, and you can see it simply here by looking in the hole in the way that it is. But it looks like they did something like that, like they went through this incredible amount of trouble to make it look like this, but to do it like that. The Cyclopean building that I keep going into, and I try not to do too much of it at one time. And it looks like niches in Peru too that have this exact same appearance, and it's also built out of Cyclopean building materials too, which is strange. And then you look at them at Eletri, and here they are again. And there are niches on the outside of buildings, not necessarily a sacred niche on the inside. And of course, people have said they must have had a statue sitting here in each one of these that long ago has been gone and so on. But false doorway situations too. Where that second one there is actually a false doorway because it doesn't have the bottom. Well, they stole the rocks out of it. No, they didn't have the rocks there. That's a false doorway. So now we get some of the first art, and you can look at these Etruscans, and you can tell that they're very Caucasian, and they look extremely, oh, I don't know what you would call it, Greek or Italian, somewhat of a mix, somewhat between slightly wavy hair and a little more curly hair. And these people are known to put oil in their hair and stuff, so they get that whole curly look, you know, and everything, a little bit Guido-ish, pardon me. And so you can see their different styles of dress, and it's fabrics that are colored, and also a very Minoan set of colors, by the way. And they too have that same Egyptian green that kind of turns blue over time, so they have trouble with that. Here he shows him with a lyre that's there, and this is that double set flute that they have going on, which is neat and complicated. They can blow both things at one time. Some people have ones like these that they use their nose to blow as opposed to their mouth to blow into and everything. It's kind of neat. And then has this urn here, which apparently is like incense, so they might be having a party burning off that incense type thing. They even have different styles of sandals going on, so they're not doing something that looks so Egyptian, but they're doing something that tries to show some variation. Instead of like groups of the exact same thing, they try to show groups of slightly different things. Instead of three birds flying and their wings are exactly the same as each other, because that is a bird in flight, there's a few different depictions of them in flight. And things aren't so carbon cookie cutter. And whenever they make hand gestures, they make their hands in a larger size and stuff. And this is seen through a few of these Caucasians from Sumerians, which we had been blending and talking a little bit about, and they almost have that same Sumerian Akkadian look, but we don't do bearding and things anymore, and people don't grow long hair and look so Jesus-ish either. But again, what we see in this art is a red ochre or a tanned male and a extremely pale female. And this is symbolic and goes back thousands of years before this, and it appears to really gotten strengthened in the time of farming, where the men are basically out doing all the farming and getting extremely tan. The women don't have to, and they don't have to work, so they are kept pale. And you can see the symbology they talk about in the Bible. In fact, one even actually begs forgiveness just because she's tan. She had to work the fields that Shamash the sun has looked upon her, and things. You know, I am comely, O Israel. Like, you know, hey, even though I don't have pale skin, and of course she's gonna pale. She's gonna wax pale, like Jacob does after all of his battles and stuff, and going out and doing things. But you can imagine in the Middle East back then, and people are running around half naked. There's a lot of tanning going on, and a lot of the women are probably more tan than that, and a lot of the pale people are probably a little bit more tan than that, and maybe the tan people weren't as quite as tan as that, or as tan as that, and so on. You know, whenever I was a kid playing in Texas and out in the middle of the summers that are breaking 100 degrees, running around in nothing but shorts and thongs and a necklace, I got looking like this quite a bit. And no, I never got pale like this. In fact, nobody really gets this pale except for some pale Nordic or something like that. In fact, a Nordic in the sun will eventually get a lot darker than that too. See if it shows up, but my skin here is cardboard colored to close to this guy, and not as thin as that, although I'm a blonde and I have an Irish background with a mix. But regardless of that, these two people are definitely shown as being Caucasians, but you can see that ideal going on. And so this isn't a female though, so what's going on? Well, nobility too are shown the same way, and priests are shown to be the same way because they are also kept fair and so on. They're not the workers, they're the da-da-da. So it's one way of showing difference into them, and you can see that from Egypt with the same red ochre symbology, and then pale females and priests and so on. And it same as Minoans, same as Etruscans that are here, same as the Mitanni, same as the Greeks and a lot of Greek art and stuff, which this is a lot like. Rarely people try to even do blonde hair, but that was a decent look at it. Here's one place in Laszlo. This is or Lazio, central Italy area. So what we're looking at is like, proto-Roman area and stuff like that. It's not too far from that. These walls and all these things cut into stones. This picture here is neat because it looks like they actually hewed this out of a blob of stone and cut in the lines of it. And here's the out exterior of it. The weathering on this, people have talked about, doesn't go with the amount of timeline that they give. They say this happened and the Etruscans did it right whenever they were there at the very end of their reign, and they go, no, they've got another place that they've dated it twice that date and it doesn't have as much weathering. And they talk about weathering patterns and how much ice you get and how much weather that you get that helps to cause erosion and things. And this is supposed to be a slightly harder stone than the other one too. So it just kept getting worse whenever people started having the debate about it. And I think they've pretty much left it alone. And there are a few places like this, but look how this is just hewn out of the regular rock and all these shifting. But there's this line running down, and they actually had a sewage type thing going on. Ancient Minoans, when we did the special on it, and I don't know if anybody's looked at any of it, but they were one of the people that actually had some running type of sewage, and in fact said that there was supposed to have been a hot spring on that island that was thermally running, which probably lead to the volcano and everything, but also cold too that they could get. So not only that, but they had cold and hot running water. And you can see this water runoff in trenches that they've purposely made into this hard granite type rock. And these pits in these areas, and it goes to another level, on up, and here's these pits again that are up here that are perfectly squared off and hewn out of solid stone. But the whole thing seems to be slightly worked, and then that hole cut into it. You can kind of make a scale whenever you get a whole lot of people in there and tourists and see what it looks like. And now you'd have to go up, and a lot of people have said that this looks some type of Aztec-y thing and stuff, and sure enough, and there are giant walls and altar thing here that's damn near 40 foot tall in a lot of places, made out of huge cycloptic stones, and you could probably get that to believe that that was something like that too. And you think that's so neat. Look at this damn road that's here that's made out of cobblestones and lines. Now, it's been built later. It's a lot later, and it's like one of the roads to Rome, blah, 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 and then it was repaired a lot later, too, and then whenever they redid this and everything, but giving the same idea, pretty wicked. Another thing, too, is that, every 30, 40 feet down this one run here, they appear to have a French drainish type thing, what we would call a French drain, built into the ground. At the time, it wouldn't have had a grill even on it, because this looks like it was before metalwork. They would have had stones just piled up in there, letting the water still seep through so nobody would step in the stones. And it seeps out, runs through the wall that's on your right-hand side and down, and takes the water out of this area in this walking area. It's just kind of neat to see that. And also this fact, this is a window that's up there at a good second, third level has been all sealed up at long times. This guy looks like he's been superimposed on there. I don't know. I don't understand. It really does. I think that people standing in here would be taller, and I don't understand the picture unless he's trying to almost give a perspective, but that's not a correct perspective because that guy's 4 foot tall. Here is some of those ruts that we were talking about, and they lead around and up and through mountains. That this side here and this side here, this used to come down at about this angle, right, like that, It maybe even bumped taller than that, but one thing, it did not have this gap. And these people were a people that instead of running around hills, started carving right through them, and it looks like they assistedly carved what would fit uniform-sized cartwheels in constant movement of this area. And you look at the amount of erosion, even if they would have had crappy wheels and that would get rocks impregnated them and helped them to groove it. People have said this went on for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that's if they had hundreds and hundreds of carts going every day. And this is just one little example. I did one whole video about it about a year and a half ago of all these ruts, and you can find them in Texas and all kinds of areas. And they try to blame it on the wagon train thing and stuff. And you look at the amount of erosion of these people and those versus it and so on. And some of these places that look like modern highways or modern railways where they connect in conjunction. So you would be tracking along, and then you make him go left and it'll track out left, or you make him go right and it'll track out right and stuff. There's a few of those little hitchbacks and things that they have around there too. And it's like, well, these people are doing a lot of it, but it doesn't appear that right there is any mine in any way, shape, or form. Stone quarries, situations like that. Now in the middle, you can see this rut that he's sitting in himself. And the middle they have there, you can see it's worn down and a little smooth and funny looking and worn down on the edges. And this is people and animals causing this, running down through the middle of it. What's strange about it is that in a lot of cases there is nothing in the middle, even in here some places, but all around in the other places. So were they using ropes and walking down the side? Well, there isn't a rut there either. There isn't a rut, but that there's just these things. Well, the wheels created a hell of a rut. Okay, but the things that walked through there have hooves and are people that just naturally grind it, even like this. And yet the other ones don't have some of it on there. And people just kind of shrug their shoulders like they must have used an alternate method. Of course, mostly alternate methods show to be something totally different. This is an oddity that's shown here too. It looks like a little mountain thing. And one guy was prophesizing that what they had done was actually sculpt out part of the mountain in ancient times to make it into what it is, and these tombs are built into it. I hope I have a picture of these tombs and stuff into it. But this rock work looks, like Gorny Ashoria or places like that. It's like giant cracked up rock, and a lot of times people have said, well, that they built this, oh no, it's just natural, and they hewed into it, but then took out the pieces that are the segments of the internal parts. And it's real debatable whether this is extremely old and built by people in giant cyclopean rocks, or it's just something that natural and then they attacked on afterwards of it. But the face of it is just flapped off smooth. And they don't even want to get the idea that, well, they at least made this smooth and do things. You're just going to say it was just like this and that they went into it. And then these other stones that are up here, the giant ones you can barely make out, that seem to have come from these stones here, and somebody put them up there, and somebody put that group of stones up there too, right? So it just seems odd, and nobody wants to go with the old age of it and everything, but then who took that and made that smooth? Because it never would be smooth. Some would be poking out, some would be not. Even if it crackles up like it does, when it falls apart, for it to end up being exactly fissured smooth like that just sounds odd. And if it did fall off those last ones, well, where the hell are they? Well, they're under the dirt and stuff here. No, there's rock right there and stuff, and most of these rocks have been taken away to somewhere. Where are they taken away to? Well, there's this place they believe is built out of this rock, but it's 140 miles away. That sink in for a minute. There's no ruts that's showing it or anything like that. And this is that place that these rocks in Alteri are 140 miles away. And there's a vineyard that's supposed to have been there for thousands of years. But you can tell the vineyard was built way after these places were built and set into it after the place was abandoned. And this is the size of a person versus these walls. And these walls at one time went much taller, and it looks like the top rocks have been pried and knocked off and taken away somewhere. Other places you can see where it is actually still fully solid. Fully solid. And here's a strangeness too, and an incredible build. is they built water ditches for water rundown, separate from what the people are coming at. French drain in the sets here, French drain at each one of these white rocks that are like here, that runs through and then out the other side of it, and you walk over it. So like a sewer pipe going under the street. And that was built before the place that's on top of it, and they dated way back. But then it's got that feature in it that's got to be more modern and stuff. It's kind of odd. But the oddity to me was that they built this to be flat. The top is level with not the ground. The ground arches and goes down, 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 but they built it up taller and taller and taller, and actually it goes up, 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 and it's squared off, much taller here than it is here, and even than here, and you can see the edge of it. Well, it's just out of view. God, that's so bright. Hopefully it isn't there. And so you can see even there, they tilted that part down, but that's actually level, totally. You're standing over at a distance, this thing is level, totally. Built out of cyclopean stones, totally. Freaky looking. And they keep wanting to say it was rebuilt by somebody later. And it may have been starting to fall apart and somebody rebuilt it. Showed you that they knew what the hell they were doing too, but worse than that, all this cyclopean stonework is seen to be around this Etruscan area that goes on. And were the Etruscans the one that did it? Actually, it looks like this was there a lot older than what we call the Etruscans. Maybe in the Etruscans in the same area, but the Etruscans seem to have come from a Proto-Indo-European area on the other side of Greece, or at least a major portion of them came in at one time to a people that were here that perhaps already did this. So sometimes when we call certain people certain things, maybe it's not quite everything. Like people have come into question about Egypt and its ancient archaic date and some of the erosions that could be on that, and how that shows an ancient connection of erosion patterns that just says that it could go a hell of a lot older and predate them, and they may have come into this situation. And you look at things like this, and it can get you thinking wild thoughts. See if it's in here at all. I think I have to So over certain doorways too, this is one thing that was talked about in the Bible as being bad, a Sodom and Gomorrah type situation, but here are 3 penises above the door here. And that's kind of weird. They also have alignments to certain stars and show an astronomy that at the time is quite remarkable. They appear to be elitist and have a type of farming of cattle and things that goes with it. Some of the interiors of their buildings look like they're mimicking extremely huge cedar planked building material when they're carving it out of raw stone. And it's got colonnades in it, which we would consider to be extremely Roman and so on. And this is not really cedar planked looking, but almost like it's made out of stone if they use stone blocks, but it's all hewed out of one, and they didn't have to do any of this. Why build it like the underside of a boat? Why build it corbelled? And it's got a slight arch to it, but it's not, extreme arched or anything. But it's just weird, isn't it? And just like Cusco, Brazil, and places, this is built into the walls that make up the city. And these places that go up and down sometimes are a cyclopean wall that goes up and turns into very thin, and they kept it there. And they've ended up building houses into it. That before this house was there was a house built into it, and before there was that, there was someone else been built into it. Before that, there was the ruins that were here, And before that, there was an actual gigantic wall going all around, and people with huge stone rooms that are all made of cyclopean wall material going all around, like still as seen here. People talk about how this was probably rebuilt because they're using semi-uniform stones and not building out of this cyclopean material. They don't have to. There's even round ones like this. Not only is it neat to try to get it flat, but this thing right here is a tower, and it's built out of it. There's another one in the distance here, and they're all made so they are flat, but not flat, slightly arched, every single damn rock, to where it makes it smooth around in a circle. And every rock has a touch upon it. It's not like going around it. It's smooth. And most of these stones, you can't fit anything between. A lot of places you can. But it's that same concept that we've looked at so often. Some of the bottom stones there, tens of tons. Although a lot of them are a lot less than that. Just trying to get a ton to move in any way, shape, or form, or to make a rock that was a ton in a shape like that is, just unfathomable. The concept and of why, unless there was a lot of it going on that we are not aware of. This is a cathedral they had built at the time. Now it has a Christian form and cross and stuff into it, but this was supposed to have been where famous people were buried back in the day. And if you look at it, it has a pan ceiling that today we would have think it looks nice with our modern architecture onto it. Can you make that out? That pan ceiling, double-lipped pan ceiling, edging around the whole thing, cut and squared off, incredibly nice for purpose. The edging here is scalloped. The edging here is scalloped for some reason. Inset. In a lot of their burials, they have a bed that's made out of stone instead of the wood beds that they made, and so it's perpetual. And then they have the body laying down here, but they even make fake pillows to go with it, and some of the pillows kind of look like pillows, and they'll have them all around the rooms and stuff. It's quite neat, very unique and different. This is called Costa. It's got that same lines, same cyclopean rock, huge, gigantic walls, 30 foot tall, built in. And a lot of people said that they took a natural cave and made it into this, that they expanded it and made it into it, and that the pillars that are made there are made out of the stone that actually came out of it itself. And that there were more pillars coming this way, but they're gone now, and more of this coming out, like there was an awning built onto it at one time, and then all of that's gone. But the awning was false, projecting off the rock. And you can see these ledges and these seating around here. And these people at the time didn't sit up and eat like there was a table or anything. They would recline and eat on one side or the other, the left or the right. You see that in their art. I think there's some pictures of that coming up. There was that one earlier. I think it's just interesting as hell. And there's just oddities that stand out. This has a separate entrance into it that was boarded up at one time, and this cutout that was put into it, and it's in an architecture and a style that people don't try to give to these people, but it's odd. They've called it a penis-headed architecture, and then they show that in all of the ancient Aryan areas that there were of the world, by the way. And there are niches out here, but it's niches set on an angle leaning in enough to where it probably wouldn't have held anything into it, so what's the extra niche for? Well, forget about that. The ceiling is covered with windows and arches. That's weird. And there's a hole going up through it that leads all the way up out of the whole top of the thing. But a cutout circular oval here, and a lot slightly hex pattern, and pillars, and an entrance to it. The amount of work that went into something like this is, I mean, people can't fathom what it would take just to make these rocks fit together, just to make these polygonal shapes. And this is considered to be part of the Mycenaean civilization, and some of this is in Turkey, and some of this is in Greece, and then Lazio, Italy, and you can see the same type of architecture in there. And I've shown one just on these weird cell structure. It looks like the cell structure in a leaf, right? And there could be a reason behind that, but all over the place. And not only here, I mean, it's weird, but I tried to do it in my video, but I didn't pull it off too well. But I wanted to do that spooky, where it actually showed, like, okay, look, here's this stuff that's here and here, and they found some here and here. Oh, and here and here. Oh, and here and here. Oh, and here and here and here and here. And way out here and way over there and way over here and here and here. Oh, and in America and here 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 in South America. So, but I don't think I pulled it off real well, but I remember it being the original idea of what I was going to do, but I didn't piece it together in such a fashion to where I just got more and more sarcastic as I went through it. So you can see the size of these stones, and just something like this little extra piece right here. Why is it two pieces? What have they done, this gigantic rock, just to do that? So it gets up to this level, so just this rock fits on it just right. So just that one. And they get it so it gets to flat. No, they notch into it to make sure it's not flat. And the next level is definitely not at all with each other. It goes off. There's a diamond rock cut in here. This goes down at an angle. Boom, boom, boom. They're not trying to get back to smooth. They're trying to go like a block. And you can see it all over the place. And look at the size of this. I mean, over 40 foot tall. This is in Norma, Italy. It's over 40 foot tall at the corner. And no, that handbag laying there hasn't been there forever. That's probably the camera bag of the person filming the shot. This is way over in Xanthos, Turkey. Xanthos means like pale or golden here, and yellow. And other places that are cut right into the rock that look very much like other places, and like Petra, hint, hint, and places like that. This is in Blera. Now, in Lazio, we showed you those same type of things it's built on here, but this looks like a giant batholith of granite that they've carved this into, and a bubble of granite that they've carved this into. Give you some kind of scale. A lot of people say the top part there is not made by the same people because it doesn't have the same level of technology of work. It's not as big a deal. Kind of a terrible shot there, guys, but look at the insets and then those T doorways and the arching in slightly doorways, like you see arching in slightly doorways. And this starts to look like Kurgan burials and things too. Really? So it definitely has a Kurgan look to it. And here you can see their pointy helmet and some of the reasons why that blade and stuff is shown onto it, and swords and such. A sun symbol that's here on two beasts that are held up on her sides, but it's all to make the strengthening of this mirror. Oh my gosh, that's just way too out of. There's this about as clear as I get it. This is a mirror on the lady's head that's onto it. And this surface at one time, even though it's got wheat and things going around in the design, all around it would have been polished to the point of a near mirrored surface so you could see yourself. And of course it's eroded away, and it's bronze, so it starts to oxidize and things. Here's another very Sumerian symbology that's here, and it's a half animal centaur type person that's here. Kind of strange, but looks like that same symbology and that mythology that we talk about a lot. I showed this one in one about the Philippines that I talked about. For that, looks like a tokay gecko, and they have them all over the place, and there's not a gecko that's from there. There's a Mediterranean house gecko, that's not it. And people have realized that they're showing that symbology in a special way. In my Philippines, I go into that quite a bit, but Etruscans. And it looks somewhat Sumerian, but a little different. There's a good shot of that mirror. Kind of see the intricacy of the pattern that goes around it, and what they look like. And a lot can be seen in just simplistic top of a jug, for they were able to cook 3 colors into this jug, really 4, and they have a blonde hair that's on her, some red colors too, they have a gray that goes on, they have an enhanced white that they bring in, and then the black color too, so all those colors. Water symbols around the top, Phrygian cap, right? Yeah, that pointy wizard cap that we talk about. And the look of these people and a lot of their art, and I've showed it in my other video that I did, is very much Statue of Liberty looking in the face. I think a lot of people see that, but you can see her blonde and curly hair and how it locks and it does its little thing at the end. Wavy hair blowing in the wind, trying to capture a moment, and it's pretty realistic. Looks pretty good. Here's another one of those ideas, and this is the goddess, and someone has carved into the forehead of it. I don't believe that was in the original form that's on here, but it also has that Elvis looking thing, that Statue of Liberty, that same thing that looks like Tanit, and that sacred goddess, and it has in the very top of it a bun up there, but you can take that off and incenses burn in there, or a flame can be put into it, and this is like a candle, and this is a light bringer of knowledge. And you can see her delicate curled hair and the way they carved that into there, so they're really getting extremely realistic. Though it fails on some smaller things, you can still see good artistic representation there. And then the thing's just really a candle holder. How amazing. Another mirror, and it shows the signs of Horus and the falcon and the concept, and even the lady looks somewhat Egyptian. They debate on whether this was imported from Egypt itself or which way this goes with each one of them. Hopefully I have a drawing I can pull up of this picture right here, for it's a mirror's backside, and it's got a huge amount of information and pictures all drawn up through it here. And nope, I couldn't find it. Here's one of the first depictions of armor in these people that are here in the Etruscans, and it looks like he's put his sword up under his arm like nah, and reaching out to shake someone's hand. In his other hand, it looked like he would have held, though, a spear that stood straight up onto it. See his helmet with the cowling that goes around it, that kind of looks like Thor in that new part of Ragnarok where he had that flip-down helmet, then chink. He's got that around the jaws type looking thing. And if you look at his armor, it's made out of little plates hooked together. But before they made metal armor, it's believed that people used wood, cut into pieces of it, because it's stronger and hard to cut through. We know that from trying to cut down a tree versus a human. And bone. In fact, some people have tried to say this could be representation of bone armor. I think it's just platelets sewn on the fabric. So you can see their depictions of children, and this is one of the few people that have children looking worth a damn at anything. But then also ceremonial grains, and during a ceremony you can see these people that look very, I don't know, Joseph and Mary looking, for lack of a better way of describing it, in a fancy chair that's made out of what, a swan neck. It's there. But also, if you look, the interesting thing to me was that they have a rooster here, and that's straight up a rooster. And this is part of the people that domesticated this animal, for the original chicken comes from the Orient. And that makes other connections and things that are really undeniable to a point. Look at this tea set up that would look like breakfast in bed, if you would, and how intricately set up it is with spoons and things. This is a ceremonial carrying urn, and it's pictures around onto it, dancers on top of it. In Umbria, they found this written in ancient language, and it's a monolith. Oddly, it looks like 2010: A Space Odyssey. And it has some ancient backwards-looking Celtic-type script that's on it that actually works out of Phoenician, and they have found a lot of this script that's there that the Etruscans have attached to them. I did that twice. Just a medallion or a porthole type thing. This isn't that big. It's a little bit bigger than your hand. But here's neat. Here's a hinge. A literal hinge. And this flaps open, and inside was the mirror. This is a lady's compact. Effigies of gods that are like Pan, Dionysus type things, freeness and wilderness and so on. And the important part is that they have this certain beaded look that they can put on this gold and give it a texture, and then shine in other parts, and it makes it stand out. Looks quite unique. But we don't find that to be unique. We can find that style in a few different places, and that also traces connections of these people. Here's a chimera. I did a video about this before, but it's got a snake tail onto him, ruffled up back, lions, and a goat's head sticking out of his back. And of course, this has to connect with zodiac and the zodiacal signs that run around the 4 points of the zodiac, like a lot of the Lamassu do, and a lot of things like that. And it has a connection to that, but also the lions that used to be all up through Europe that I've done a video on. I don't know if this will come out before, which one will come out first, but all of the lion effigies and how there used to be lions, and the Tigris River and how that's something different. Given in death, this is a symbol of Master of the Beasts. And here we have two lions held upside down up against it. He's got a hold of their legs and their back leg and able to hold them up in the air, two lions at one time.